enriching your heart, character defining art, enhancing your life with your Kaylee, your wife. When you chase your dreams, your imagination streams, and your heart is pure.
Misplaced religious fervor has oft been tied to that period of insanity leading up to the crisis point, that pivotal period in Earth's history when, without intervention, our ecosystem might have made that irrevocable transition from illness to impending death. So many of the factions that brought us to the brink of destruction claimed religious zeal as the focal point of their activities. What was not clear to many of those who fought and died for their faith was how manipulative those who stood to profit could be. It was not hard for the various elements of the parody collective to nudge circumstances in their favor. Later, as the project gained momentum, the biggest obstacle that stood between it and success was, ironically, the fact that the project was backed by not one but two separate religions. Those who retained their sanity in that turbulent period of near annihilation developed a distaste for the way religious zealots were the pawns of parody, fighting against their own interests with the prodding and prompting of those skilled at taking advantage of them. With their purported motivations, religious in nature, it was easy to want to classify those working on the project alongside those who sided with parody. It was Quinn Sanders, in a candid moment, caught on video when he was discussing the science of the project and the way that both Houthi and Estolian beliefs supported independent thought that brought about the change of heart necessary to help garner the support needed to allow the project to prevail. Osiris Zakarian, on obstacles hindering the project.
Kadarin had the run of the house. However, in addition to the old man, there were 5 brutes to make sure she did not escape. Once or twice she considered flinging open a door and making a dash for it, but each time she looked up and saw Hector's eyes on her. He was a large, heavily muscled man with close-set eyes and a low forehead under thick unruly black hair. The other men were there on a job and would do what it took to keep her captive. But Hector scared her. Based on the way he looked at her, she would regret it if she escaped, and it was Hector who caught up with her. With Hector's eyes on her, she was effectively chained to the small house. She spent most of her time painting Ezekiel. Her first one was just a portrait. She thought about him while she worked on his features. She began with a watercolor, the medium she always used for her preliminary work. It caught the essence of the subject, was more intimate and detail-oriented. Working from memory, she was able to capture his appearance. He had amber eyes and dark blonde hair, a firm determined chin, sharp intelligence and an undefinable sense of purpose. His face was narrow, serious, sincere, and sexy. She was surprised she could remember so much. Every detail of his face came to her with perfect clarity. Her second painting, in acrylic, coalesced in her mind as she finalized the first one. Sometimes it was like that for her. She would feel an urge to put on canvas the vision from within, and could not put it off. She closed her eyes and pictured him climbing to his feet in the park as she was saying goodbye to her friends. His well-shaped hands brushing grass off his trousers, straightening his pale green shirt, and reaching up to adjust his purple and gold tie. When he had approached her in front of her house, he had a pronounced limp, and she remembered thinking that walking must be painful for him. With that memory clear in her mind, she suddenly visualized what she would paint. He would be standing, his hands clasped, just looking towards her. The background was unimportant. She pulled her sketchbook close and began to sketch his outline, feeling the familiar joy to be expressing herself with her talent. While she tried to keep her fears far from her mind, she felt as if her work was substantially better than anything she had done before, given the possibility that she would never know true freedom again. As she worked on Ezekiel's outline, she frowned. There was something wrong with the suit he was wearing. Perhaps she would not have him wearing a tie. After several additional attempts, she decided that he wouldn't wear a suit either. Her next sketch was just an outline. She filled in the details for his face, trying to listen to her heart so she would know what to have him wearing. The longer she worked, the more it changed. None of the things she drew really seemed to work. She never quite captured the image that was clamoring within her for release. Her pencils were scattered all over the table. When she gathered them together, one of them inadvertently slipped out of her hand, leaving a dark mark on the sketch she was preparing to throw in the trash. She looked at the way the mark connected his ankles and was suddenly inspired. Flipping to a new page in her sketchbook, she worked rapidly, feeling how right this new image was when compared with all the previous ones she discarded. When she was done, she leaned back and looked at it, fascinated. Ezekiel was transformed from a businessman into a monk. She could already visualize what the finished product would look like. The robe would be a blaze of colors, she thought, with a purple base color, augmented by elaborate embroidery in green and gold, tied at the waist by a braided cord with metallic gold in caps falling to knee level. With the strength of inspiration, she began to paint. Everything she had envisioned came to life before her, and the more time she spent on the painting, the more she admired him. She spent nearly a week working on that second painting. It was a time seasoned in the day by occasional discussions with Joseph, and, more frequently, peppered by conversations she overheard in a foreign language that often turned into shouting sessions with, she suspected, Ezekiel on the other end of the line. The muscle-bound helpers seemed to speak most frequently in Spanish. Only Hector conversed with Joseph in the language she could not identify. If infrequent conversations and incomprehensible diatribes on the telephone were the flavor of her days, her nights were spiced by Ezekiel himself. In her dreams, she was kidnapped and he always saved her. The method changed every night, but the result was always the same. Once he rescued her, taking her away from the little farmhouse, he would pull her into his arms. He would be trembling, and when she looked into his eyes and saw his tears, she wept with him in reaction to all that had taken place. After their tears dried up, he would cup her face and say to her,
"I love you, Cadarin Cicero, from now until the end of time."
He would kiss her and they would end up passionately entangled in a swan-shaped bed. In the tradition of the romantic novels she loved to read, he would ask her if she would marry him, be with him forever. The dream would always make it to the very instant before their passion was consummated, and then reality would intrude. She would wake up, gasping, frustrated to be deprived of this man claiming his reward for being her knight in shining armor. Shortly after she finished the second portrait, she took her largest canvas and began to pour her heart onto it. She rarely painted without a sketch or a plan. Her art instructor was adamant that the best art, the type that was admired in 100 years, was planned out, not just poured onto the canvas like some out-of-control mindless splatter of random pigment that critics loved and those with culture hated. She had never quite agreed with him, but she had made a comfortable living from what he taught her. Now, for some reason, she felt compelled to do everything he derided. She had to allow her talent full latitude. When she was finished, she looked at it in awe. It was the best thing she had ever done. Ezekiel was more dynamic in this painting than in the others. As if he could step out of the canvas and pull her into his arms. In it he was standing, his legs widely spaced, the hem of his robe flaring in a breeze. One leg was slightly forward of the other and his left hand held at chest height, palm up. He held a dagger in his right hand, and the blade, serpentine and etched with foreign symbols, rested horizontally on his palm while he gripped the jewel-encrusted handle.
Your soul through and through.